Okay.
All right, welcome everyone. We're going to get started right on time. It's 12 o'clock. Welcome to today's webinar titled RSI and You, Tips for Simplifying Contact with Your Students. My name is Anwar Hijaz. I'm a political science faculty at Saddleback College and a faculty mentor for the CBC at One. It's my pleasure to welcome you all today. We have a really exciting webinar in store for everyone. It's nice to see that everyone is introducing themselves in the chat, so please go ahead and share your name, what college you're from. I love to see all the different places everyone is coming from. So I'm excited to welcome our facilitator for today's webinar, Sabrina Roberts. Sabrina is a communication studies instructor and a CVC course facilitator with over a decade of teaching experience, including 8 years teaching online. She currently teaches at Chaffey College, Citrus College, and Riverside Community College District, and has facilitated professional development courses for CSU online course services. Sabrina is very much passionate about expanding online education and exploring how AI is shaping the future of higher education. She's also the founder of Upbeat Vision Consulting, supporting educators through course design, career strategy, and innovative teaching practices. When she's not in the classroom, Sabrina can be found gardening, which I need to get some tips from about, and then also taking care of her 3 adorable cats. So before we get started with the webinar, I did want to share a few announcements.
And
During today's
if I could, for the interpreters, if we can remember just to slow down in
Oh,
our
sorry, that was me
speech.
slowing down. I will, I apologize.
Happy
That was literally
Monday.
me telling myself, okay, talk slower. Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
so
reminder.
much.
I appreciate it. So, during today's webinar, we will be sharing out a survey and we'll be dropping in the chat. If you could just please take a few moments to fill it out. It shouldn't take more than just a few minutes and it will really help CVC to improve for a future program. And then also, we'd like to thank our ASL interpreters today for being here. We really appreciate the support that they provide to make this session inclusive and accessible for all our participants. And then finally, if you need proof of attendance for flex credit or professional advancement, please stay until the end, complete the survey, and request a copy of your responses in the Google form. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it to Sabrina. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anwar, and thank you so much for everyone in attendance. Thank you so much also to the ASL interpreters and to Chelsea. So, I hope everybody had a great weekend, and I can't believe it's March already. Today, I just want to go over what RSI is and how to simplify or create systems for your own RSI practices. Now, I'd work in multiple campuses, and each and every campus, there's one thing we had in common, is that each and every campus has talked to us about RSI, how to improve interaction with students, quality interaction, and to create community. Let me go ahead and begin with my first slide. So today I want to go over, we already had the potential introduction, but just to explain what regular substantive contact is, what are some of the challenges? I want you to tell me what are some of the challenges that you face. Now I'll talk about my challenges, how to streamline said practices so you can focus that energy on creating quality interaction. So what parts to automate, what parts to customize. How to use AI for discussion. So I just recently went to or looked at resources to help us or to have AI help us create more robust discussions. That's one of my points that I'm working on as an instructor. And we are also using Padlet in addition to the Zoom chat just to get your feedback and to get your questions. And I will try to answer them within the webinar, but if I can't, of course, let me know. Okay. Um, let's go ahead. Do you have any questions? Oh, thank you so much for all the introductions. Oh, is there an echo on my end?
I don't hear echo, so it might be the individual's audio, but you're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't hear it either.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so I'll just move this over a little bit. All right, so RSI, so it stands for Regular Substantive Interaction. And before we take a deeper dive on how to do this, I want us to think about the three ways we interact with our students in the classroom. So what are your practices for the beginning of your courses? So do we have welcome emails, welcome videos? Do we establish what the class is about and how to navigate the classes? How do students feel welcome? Now, we take this for granted for in-person classes because they come in, they see us, we're here, we're able to have those conversations and answer those questions in real time. But we have to take a couple extra steps for that connection, start those connections early, and maintain those connections regularly. But we'll also think about how students will interact with each other. So, for example, most common, we have the discussion boards, but we also have other ways such as chats, discussion boards that's directly designed for just student interaction outside of discussion and outside of the discussion assignments. We have video projects, peer reviews, and there's many ways for students to interact with each other. You probably have thought about this within your course design, or if you want to update your course design, that might be some of the things you want to include more of, but that's another question. So how do students interact with each other? And how will you continue contact with students throughout the semester? So I teach multiple online classes with multiple schools. So one of those initial challenges was scheduling the time, not only just for grading, but for announcements and how can students contact me? Can I use other tools such as Zoom for even asynchronous classes so they can contact me? How can I use chat? How can I use all the resources that Canvas has and additional software that your individual institutions have in order to connect with students better. So just think about these questions, write them down. I think we have some interaction with the chat. So that's good. So let me go ahead and fix this up. All righty. So according to the ACCJC, the Accrediting Commission for Community and Junior Colleges, we are looking at both substantive and regular. But what does that mean? Now, we're thinking about a substantive. So, what is the quality of the interaction that we have with our students? And this can include discussions. If you have a synchronous course, it's a lot easier to have that engagement because you'll be with them via Zoom. With asynchronous courses and synchronous courses alike, you want to include the rubrics and personalized feedback. So, for example, you can think about, say, if a student is doing well on an assignment, instead of just saying, oh, instead of using the rubric just to say, oh, good job, you can type personalized messages and say, hey, this is a good job. This is what you did well. Keep up the good work. And of course, if there are some trouble spots in the student's work, you can provide specific feedback on how they can improve. We want to make sure to personalize it for each student, just like we would for in-person classes. We also have discussing trends via announcements. So the announcements are a great way to reach students all at the same time. But in addition to just letting students know, hey, what's going on with assignments, we can also see like, hey, here's some trouble spots in discussions, or hey, here's some common ways that students can approach this project. We can specify some additional supports that the campus has for particular assignments. So, for example, I teach communication studies. So students do online presentations and group presentations. So you can definitely automate some parts of the announcements. For example, the assignments for the course that usually stays the same between all courses. And one of the ways you can customize to meet this associated interaction is talk about the trends and talk about specific ways that particular class can improve. So we want to make sure to add automated systems and make sure to customize to meet that requirement. Then it has to be regular. One of the things that I struggled with was, hey, I need to focus on grading. I have to do the succession of interaction. I have to make sure that all this is graded on time. And you want to also have a specific timeline. So, for example, my timeline is 2 weeks, but a timeline for you and your students to expect when to give feedback. So, allow yourself that timeline as well. And so, for example, don't say, oh, I have a 36-hour turnaround. If you're able to do that, great. But if that's not a feasible amount for feedback, that's fine. It's all about communication and communicating what is feasible for you with the grading, excuse me, with the grading. But we also want regular interaction. So do we have multi-week announcements? When should they expect feedback? If they have a question via inbox, do you have it connected to your Outlook so you can connect and be able to connect with those students promptly? And do you have parameters as far as your time as well? So your time is valuable. So if you don't, if you say, for instance, if you have a policy that you don't, excuse me, if you have a policy that you do not answer emails at night, that's okay. You're allowed to have a life too. But just make sure to communicate to say, hey, allow 24 hours for emails and concerns. Weekends, if you have a weekend gap, or if you don't, just let them know in advance and then make sure to stick with your own communication policy. All right, so here are some additional ways we can meet those requirements. Like I said before, here are some of the questions I wanted you guys to ask or to think about. What are your practices for the beginning of the course? We want to start off strong with our welcome messages. Instructor bio, humanizing the courses. We have the 10-10-10 communication course SCBC. So if you need some additional support there, want some guidelines specifically towards RSI and those policies, those are courses you can take as well. Do you have a start here module? So for example, I'm in the process of doing peer reviews for other campuses, and I am looking at those campuses with, excuse me, looking at those courses with fresh eyes, and it's outside of my discipline. So I'm looking for the start here. So the start here module. So you want to make sure to have a way for students to easily navigate the course and clearly talk about how to navigate the course. You can also include an intro video. Videos do sound a little bit daunting. I understand, but just having a quick introduction video can help humanize your course. It can help introduce yourself to the class, and you can use that as a way to get a tour of the Canvas course if you like. Do you have student support services? So what are some resources for your campus that the students can use? Tech support, course schedule, tech requirements, just the basics, but at least that's a really good start that students can possibly may ask you less questions because everything is there. But if they do have questions, you're there from as well. Also, in the beginning of the course, you can also have a Q&A type of discussion. So I have a discussion board labeled Q&A that I check periodically, just in case if they don't want to answer. If they are looking through the modules and they have a question right then and there, I have information to my inbox and information for the Q&A. And how students will interact with each other. So discussion replies. There are tools such as Harmonize if your class, excuse me, if your school has it. Chat. So chats is a really good way if you're grading someone else and someone can pop up and ask a quick question. That's a really good way to have that synchronous element to the course. I like to have Zooms, even in my asynchronous courses. They're optional, of course, but I like to have a couple of Zoom sessions before major projects and before major speeches. And students have a tendency to show up. So, say for instance, they come into the Zoom, they have a question, I can answer it right then and there. And then when we link back to those announcements, because of course the announcements we're using that as a tool for regular succession of content. I can jot down the notes, general notes from those Zoom meetings, and then give some and update those announcements. So there's some ways that we engage with the students and using the tools to keep up with those requirements. And think about how you're going to interact with the students through the semester. Announcements multiple times a week. I like to do beginning, middle, and end of the week, keeping that present, keeping that contact with them, grading with specific comments. and having video lectures. So let's chat for a second because I talked for a little bit, but I want to get your experience. So I'm going to provide the Padlet link onto the chat. Just let me do that for just a moment. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to stop share for just a moment so I could do that. Excuse me.
Sabrina, I could drop it in for you.
Okay, let me give you both. I apologize. Give me just a moment.
There are two links.
Yes, so I have one in the beginning, one in the end. Let me go ahead and do that. Just a moment. Thank you so much.
I have your
So here's the,
slides, so I can pull it from it if you'd like.
oh, okay. So here's the first one for you, just so you don't have to go through that. And here's the second one. And we can also answer it in the chat as well.
I went ahead and dropped the first one, so if people are able to
Okay.
access it, can you please give us a thumbs up?
hmm And it's a little difficult for me to view the chat. Thank you so much. All right, so let me go ahead and share the screen again. Thank you so much for your patience. Um, let's see. All right. So if you don't want to go to the Padlet, I also have the option of sharing it via the chat. I have my additional computer to the side, so pardon me. But I wanted to know, like, hey, we have online instruction is great. I love online instruction because it provides additional access to higher education for students, especially if they have, excuse me, if they have different schedules, they have family responsibilities and all those things. But it can be a challenge to put those classes together and to do RSI. So I just wanted to know, hey, um, what are some challenges that you face regarding RSI? All right, so I have some pop-ups in the Padlet. Thank you so much. I'm really glad it works. It's my first time using it. All right. Then I have some, okay. I love how it embeds the canvas. Oh, yes, definitely. I love that, Jennifer. One definitely use it more often. All right. Let's see. So, ooh, we have a lot coming up. Thanks, you guys. So let me see. I have my additional computer right here. Oh, the link doesn't work. That's okay, Andrea. If you want to just pop in your, if you want to just put your comment in the chat, that's fine as well. I'm looking at two places. All right. So I'm just going to just read a couple out loud if that's okay. RSI can be met in a formulaic approach that nobody particular, oh, okay, enjoys, but it seems safe for outsiders to review.
Pardon for the interpreter. If we can remember to slow down, especially when reading, like just now, just to
Yes.
slow down a little bit. Thank you.
I apologize. Thank you so much. So let me go ahead and read it from the interpreter Gartner. RSI can be met with a formulaic approach that no one particularly enjoys, but seems safe for outsiders to review. How can we use more innovative ways to meet RSI without being worried about it won't count? Oh, that's a great question. So when we think about it counting, right? At least from my research, we want to see like, hey, think about your interactions from a student's point of view. And sometimes, it's been a while since I've been in school. So think about how do we want to connect with our instructors. So don't think about it as like, does it count? Does it not count? Think about quality. Think about, okay, say for instance, we have feedback. So just providing feedback in as long as it's customized can help meet those requirements. But we also want to think about, hey, how is it helpful for the student? So always think about the student first. And if you do have any questions, of course, this is just one webinar, but talk to your local distance education coaches, instructional designers for additional information as well, because I talk to them as well. All right, thank you so much for the question. All right, so I'm just going to read a couple more. There's a bunch. Um,
Sabrina, can you share the Padlet screen for those that weren't able to access this so they can actually see the responses?
okay, not a problem. Let me go ahead and share the screen. Thank you so much. Let me exit out of, if everybody can see, there you go. Can everybody see my screen?
We we still see the slides.
Okay, so I'm going to stop share and go back on. Sometimes that happens in my regular classes. Can everybody see my screen now?
It's yes, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for the reminder. All right, so from brushstroke master, awesome artist. Some of the challenges are the time required. It's hard to do all of that. What is the minimum that counts? Students are not noticing, makes us wonder, is the time worth it? Okay, though these are definitely great concerns. And quite so let's go ahead and talk about the time required. So for example, say for instance you have your announcements, right? One way to save time is to preload or create the announcements ahead of time. And then so you don't have to worry about creating announcements every week because that's how I got behind too. And then you can also customize them. So you have the part that's customized, and you could go in and incorporate those trends and go in and incorporate some of the things that you notice. So it's about balancing automation and customization. And of course, when we think about being student first, sometimes students might not notice, and that's not something we can control inside the classroom or outside the classroom. But these requirements are required. So it's one of those things that we have to show and demonstrate for accreditation purposes. So um, the Canvas rubrics help. That makes that streamlining processes, right? Making sure we have robust rubrics with the Canvas. It helps them speed greater. And then the customization part comes in. Say if you have papers, you have the little thought bubbles that pop up on the screen, or you can also add your comments within the chat, excuse me, within the section as well. So remember, we're balancing automation versus customization. All right. I'm going to look at a couple more before I move on. Excuse me, before I move on. But thank you so much for such, you have a lot of questions. Good job. Let me see. Um, Not enough time. I have teach 5 courses per semester. In addition, I feel my students don't read my feedback. They have questions about their grade and they email at me asking me information that was provided in my feedback. Okay, that's again, that is such a valid concern. And we've worked so hard putting the classes together, doing the lectures, recording the lectures and putting all this energy, and I totally understand that. Oh, thanks so much, Jennifer. You references to the feedback that you already provided. Ask follow-up questions saying, hey, take a look at the feedback. Do you have any follow-up questions for me? You can maybe even copy and paste some of the comments that you made in your initial response. Excuse me. The rubrics definitely help because the more detailed and robust your rubric is, the less questions you may have. And remember, we have to go back to when we were in college. These are still college students, so they might not know or understand some of the ways to interpret that feedback. So you can ask follow-up questions in response like, hey, is there a part that you didn't understand? Did you look at the rubric? What part of the rubric that you don't understand? And that can also give you feedback of what to change for future courses. Oh, you guys are doing so great and going back and forth and providing additional feedback and tips for each other. You guys are doing a good job. Thank you guys so much. So I want to just read one more. Um, oh, okay, Catherine. So Catherine, ooh, okay. So often at the same time, few students that listen and interact with the announcements. I used to give extra credit, but I do narrative grading now, so I'm not sure how to encourage them in. Okay. So so within my conversations to do research for this particular webinar, because we're in the TikTok generation, the excuse me, the TikTok generation, the social media generation, I'm experimenting with videos this semester. And Canvas made it really easy to do video responses. There might be a way to do that. You can go ahead and listen to videos and grade it that way. You can also add extra credits to add videos, interactive chats. So there's ways you can do it by using the Canvas tools. Video is really a good way for them to instead of just sitting there and typing out their responses and the way you form questions. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how to use AI to revamp some of your discussion questions. So when they respond, they have to think just a little bit harder and a little bit more thoroughly for the questions. Oh, but you guys have such good ideas. I really appreciate your feedback. Faculty buy-in and student responses. Well, at least for us, quite frankly, we got to do it. So that's the buy-in. You can use the hammer to have us buy in. But student responses is similar to what we do in an in-person class. If there's silence, ask more questions. What are some ways to engage? What are some of the tools that we have to get them engaged? And it is, thank you so much for talking about it being the biggest challenge. But I want to commend you guys for being here because we're learning together. I'm learning with you and commend you for tackling online instruction. Many of us taught online during the pandemic where the rules were different. So thank you so much for keeping up with these skill sets and being engaged. So one of the things that I had to learn was, hey, we might have made some mistakes in the past, but we are learning to learn new skills in the future. So you're doing a great job. No matter what your challenges are, you're still doing a great job because you're learning. Thank you so much. I have anybody in the chats. Oh, a video response to do every week in Google Docs for feedback using ScreenPal. Very good. Thank you so much. We'll think faculty I think of doing links to Canvas student guides. Thank you so much, Helen. I forgot to talk about that, but I do provide those as well for my classes. It's a really easy way, especially if students are having issues with Canvas itself, providing that in the classroom is really good. Excuse me, in the online class is really good. All right, so let me go ahead and switch back. I have to stop share to switch back to the Padlet just so make sure that you're able to see. My apologies. Next, I briefly want to talk about how to create a communication plan. So let me go ahead and make sure you can see it. My apologies for any inconvenience. So I'm just going to briefly go over a communication plan just in case you don't have one. And I have a template to, just a guideline to have you, just an inspiration.
Oh,
So you want to
Sabrina,
oh, yes.
sorry,
It's not showing?
there was a question in the chat and I wanted to make
Oh, I'm so
sure.
sorry.
No worries at all. I think
Okay.
we kind of missed it. And Andrea reminded us it was in my English classes. One way I do RSI is to respond to student comments and questions in the Google Doc readings that are linked from the Canvas page. Will these interactions count for assessors if they are not technically within Canvas, but are
Oh,
linked from a Canvas pages? I already know
okay.
to create a page making it clear to assessors where my RSI is located. Do you have any
Okay.
thoughts on that?
I do have thoughts. So, for example, I strongly suggest doing everything in Canvas, and I understand doing things in Google, especially that's where students are more familiar. If you can, and I'm glad that you're able to make that connection, I do suggest talking to either someone in your department or your instructional designer just to double check. But I always like to do things in Canvas. Think about accessibility as well. So, for example, if we like to use a lot of functionality in Canvas, just in case someone doesn't have high spec computer or the phone. So when you go in and out of the platform, it can create issues. So I'm really glad that you respond to students. So let's go ahead and give you praise for doing that. If we can try to convert that into something where it's Canvas friendly, that'll be the best. Definitely check with your department just for any clarification on that. But that was such a wonderful question. Thank you so much. Any more questions
Then
on this?
Sabrina, do you want me to wait till the end for questions or whatever you
I might
prefer?
have to. Okay, so I want to go over briefly the communication strategies, AI, and then I can go ahead and fill for more questions. But thank you guys so much for the interaction. Let me go ahead and go back to the slides. And thank you guys so much for your patience. So in your communication plan, you want to specify when you will contact students and how can contact you, how they can contact you as the instructor, how can students contact each other, and provide guidelines on which days and times you will be available and when to expect a response from you. It's okay if you're not available 24/7. You have a life too. Just make sure to communicate what those times are to your students. All right, so just briefly, just going over communication plan. You have the ways to connect with me via telephone, email, Canvas inbox, and that Q&A discussion board I was talking about. and just outline the ways they communicate with me. This is at my start here beginning module. So make sure to have that. And you can also conclude that in your syllabus page as well. I like to have the same information in multiple pages just to reduce questions and just to say, hey, here are some ways that students can access the information because, sometimes students miss things, as we all do. How can students connect to other students? So I clearly and in the student, clear to students because we want to make sure that we are student forward in, in the way we write. They can connect to each other via Canvas inbox, Q&A discussions, chats independently, um, other ways that are arranged between students, especially with group projects. And we'll also have discussions, peer reviews in my course, optional Zoom meetings if they request it. And then I also have Zoom meetings before projects on my asynchronous courses. So some additional tips for seamless RSI. Think about systems you need to create a plan. So schedule, say for example, schedule and pre-make your announcements, and then as they go along, make customizations for the course. So remember, customization, excuse me, standardization versus customization. We're trying to balance those. RSI is the customize types of communication. So we want to make sure to keep those customized, but we want to take off that cognitive load as well. Look at the communication plans at your school or at other schools. Use Canvas to schedule tasks such as announcements and initial discussion posts. So for example, what I do is I have my discussion post and I schedule or I have my pre-made initial post. I kick off the discussion and then students reply to me and then I engage or add additional responses throughout, and then I close it out. So that's something you can do. Pre-make your initial discussion post and then customize throughout. Schedule Zoom meetings and chats to close to project due dates. You can also add video announcements. So say for instance, instead of just writing and you don't want to type out anything, click the button, record, post, and your students can see you, and it's that customized weekly update. Now, it probably won't count for other courses, so it's not that evergreen content, but you can still quickly meet those RSI goals. Quick video, similar to what you would do, or similar to how you would talk to your in-person class, and then you're done with that. And you can incorporate video yourself into discussions, not necessarily evergreen content. So we're customization versus standardization, but it can help students engage. You can also encourage students to add additional videos as well. All right, so next we have AI prompts for discussion posts. So one of the shout outs to my colleague Jenny Lee at JP College. She talked about how to maximize our RSI with change our discussion post. So one of the things I learned from that webinar was encouraging collaborative discussion posts and case studies. So I can only talk about my experience as communication studies instructor. So my students are working on speeches and trying to figure out, hey, how do we present? The challenge is it's an asynchronous online course. So we had changes through, excuse me, changes in 2025, standardized, they had to speak in front of an audience and all those things. But for our discussions, what I struggle with is, okay, do I do side by side busy work or are they going to discuss? I try to match what I would do in the classroom, but what I realized is sometimes things don't translate as well. So by creating case studies and layered tasks, I'm able to, in writing, have my initial discussion posts be engaging. So it encourages me as an instructor to create more layered tasks and posts. So you want to make sure that the replies are dependent on the previous post. Take out that individual work side by side with collaborative learning. Allows the instructor to create unique responses. AI can help us with this. So just like with students, AI is used as a tool. You can customize, tell the prompt to do what you want it to do, change it. So I'm going to first show you the slides of what I did for one post and show you the chat of what I did for another post. Okay, just keep it up with time. And also, with every part of the course development process, you want to think of Bloom's taxonomy when creating prompts. So that helped me. By thinking of Bloom's taxonomy, I'm able to prompt ChatGPT a little bit better. So for example, think about are we trying to get our students to remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, or create. Create might be a little bit high for discussion posts, but it might be a little bit creation. But when we do our objectives, you can use Blue's taxonomy as a really good base, like, hey, what do you want them to do? And then you can tell ChatGPT, based on Blue's taxonomy and your task, this is what I want my students to do. So always think about Bloom's and think about backwards design. All right, so with my initial AI prompt from my COMC 1000 class for public speaking, I made the mistake of doing like this side by side discussion, like I was talking about. The part one, students can list the 3 benefits of creating a preparation outline and 3 benefits of creating a speaking outline and reply to one student's post, right? So in the classroom, it worked because we could discuss the benefits. I have everybody go one by one, and then I'm able to add my 2 cents, but it didn't translate as well in the online class. So I asked ChatGPT, I'm revising my discussion points to be more interactive. I'm thinking of a case study format. Case studies was always my Achilles heel because I'm like, I can't think of any scenarios. So that's where ChatGPT helped me the most. Just come up with a scenario and I'll edit it later. So my follow-up prompts were, can you connect discussion questions to this case study? And how can I give directions and objectives for this discussion post? So we have a case study where a student didn't do as well on her speech because her thoughts were scattered, transitions were unclear. And I like this case study because we didn't focus on a mistake, but we were like, hey, what could she have done better? How could she improve? And this is a scenario that I see happen a lot in my public speaking classes. So after reflecting on its experience, Jordan's instructor suggests focusing on more intentionality and creating both a preparation outline and speaking outline, right? So preparation outline, just for us to know, is the outline they turn into me, all the details are on there. And the speaking outline are their own personal notes. So in the revised discussion, ChatGPT created or said to make 2 specific preparation missteps. So instead of just listening like, hey, this is how, this is the benefits of having it online, which is something that we could do easily, like what could she have done better? So it's connecting delivery and processes with the task. And then explain how creating a detailed preparation outline could have prevented the problems identified in the case study. So as my students interact with the case study, they're thinking about, hey, make sure I have a good preparation outline. I don't want this happening to me. Okay, this is how the outlines connect to delivery, which connects to a better grade. So this is just one example of how AI helped me revise my prompt. Now, could I have done this on my own? Sure. But this webinar is about making things simple and easier. And because the prompt is in more detail as an instructor, I am able to provide detail about, hey, this is some things to think about in your own delivery. Think about the case study, and I'm able to have more robust discussions, right? So in the reply, identify one insight from the post that you had not considered. So it's not just, hey, I agree with you. This is great. You can just say, hey, what have you not considered? So they have to think about it a little bit more. Explain how their analysis deepened your understanding of how outlining impacts in speech organization delivery. So the reply, so they have to think about how the student's reply helps them. And then add another delivery and preparation tip. So we're talking about outlines, but we're also can talk about delivery as well based on the case study. And the replies are more robust. So if you think back to, let me go back to my first example where I made the mistake of having like this side by side type of interaction. ChatGPT helped me create a more robust prompt and robust response to the classmates. Now, before we go into thoughts, let me show you one more example from an actual ChatGPT chat. So I'm going to share real quick. So transition, okay? And then I'll go ahead and answer questions. Okay. I'm just trying to increase the. All right. So let me go ahead and um, share the screen. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you so much for your patience. All right, so here is a transcript of a chat that I just did with ChatGPT because, like I said before, in learning more about RSI, I'm trying to, revamp some of the discussions in my course. So my original prompt, can everybody see? You can see, right? Thumbs up. All right. So I am working on improving engagement with my college level online public speaking course, which it is. I want students to brainstorm topics and be more interactive and create more robust replies into conversations between students. So in my in-person course, we have a discussion about, hey, what are some topics you know more about? What are some topics you want to learn more about, right? And it works because the students get into pairs, they brainstorm and we recite them and we talk about them in class. But they didn't translate as well to my online course, right? So because I didn't put in the actual prompt yet, but I got some really good ideas. Peer-to-peer coaching, so that interactive. So because I didn't give it a lot of details, they talk about many persuasive speeches, structured response, audience analysis. So one of the things, it did give me some good ideas, but it wasn't what I asked for. So this is not argumentative. So what I did was I followed up with, sorry, I followed up with the actual post. So I talked about trying to replicate what I did in class. What societal issues do you know about? What societal issues do you want to learn more about? And then write down a thesis, right? So this is what I would do in my initial class. So it revised the prompt, gave me a couple learning objectives that I could talk about. We have Bloom's taxonomy right here. And then it talks about topics you want to learn well, but includes two sentences explaining what you already know. So we have to give more detail. Now, one thing it did make a mistake with was who might disagree with you and why. This might be important for persuasive speaking, but not for informative speaking. So I had to prompt it again. Why this topic matters now, that might be something that I want to include, like, hey, recency and timeliness of the topic. Which, what would you like to research further? Whether this topic is likely persuasive. Again, I have to reprompt it because this is informative. But it did give me a couple of ideas that I can save for my persuasive speech. So one of the things I had to do, had to reel it in. Remember, this is for an informative speech, so students will act as a teacher and not an advocate. I should have said that at the very beginning, but when you're thinking about AI and ChatGPT or Claude, you want to go back and forth. So think about it as having a conversation. So it revamped it, topic one brainstorm, and it fixed it for me. So what specifically would you teach the audience about the topic? Why would this topic be useful or relevant for a college audience? And I like that because the college, our classmates are the audience, right? So when we think about in communication studies and public speaking being audience centered, I really like that particular part, right? So just pretty much going back and forth, giving me a couple of tips and tricks. And now this is just for my discipline, but you can also think about, hey, what are some of the outputs that is given? What parameters do you want? Go back and forth. Oh, that's not good. Okay, I want it more detailed. Okay, I want it less detailed. I just asked ChatGPT can you provide some examples. providing examples is a really good way for students to think like, hey, what does it look like? Now remember it's ChatGPT, so it might not be in a student's voice. So you can say, hey, can you put this in a student's voice? And it can help you do that as well. So that's just one example, just one of the things that I did to interact with ChatGPT, and hopefully that will be helpful for you as well. Let me go ahead and stop share and go to the questions real quick because I think I saw a couple of pop-ups there. All right. Let me see what questions you have. How are we addressing students that feed these questions to AI as well? Oh, that's such a good question. What we can do, or what I try to do in my prompts, is to have like for example, try to have discussion that AI can answer very well. So for example, I asked personalized or ChatGPT gave me personalized questions like, how would you teach students about this topic? What would you do? Right? And it's also trying our best to have that discerning eye. So for example, we have a tendency to know how our students write, especially if we have writing assignments throughout the semester. So if they start sounding like a Rhodes Scholar real quick, it's like, wait a minute. And also at the very beginning, because you can disclose, hey, I use AI for some things and model that ethics. So for example, what are the do's and don'ts for for the discussions and for assignments in general? So can is cure for all of those ills as far as like, hey, feed into AI? No. But you can just say, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to, and encourage them to say, hey, truthfully, I want you to talk about the discussion, or you can include videos as well. Can't AI that. So you can say, hey, videos can be, you can use video as responses as well, and that can help solve that problem. No, I really appreciate that question. Let me see some more questions.
Sabrina, there was a few before that question.
Oh, I
One,
apologize,
no worries. One from Lisa that says, does
Lisa.
messaging feedback in grades count as RSI?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Does
Um,
messaging feedback in grades count as RSI?
yes, especially so when we think about RSI, we want to have that customization aspect. So the rubrics helps us streamline. You're able to have those Robux rubrics, boom, 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 and they have feedback, general feedback of how to do the assignment. So when you go back and forth in the comment boxes, I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. That's where we have that customized feedback. That's such a good question. And thank you so much, Anwar, for I don't want to miss any questions. Canvas is limited to certain things, but thank you. I understand that, Andrea. So I only talk about Canvas because not every single college has access to every single software, but if your college has access to different software to help you out, go ahead by all means use them. So I have to sort of speak to Jennifer audience here. But thank you so much. Oh no, thanks so much, Kristen. How many DQs per week is normal? Use them students five questions cover everything that week. Okay. Um, I think DQs are discussion questions.
Discussions, yeah.
Oh, okay. Discussion. Sorry about that. So it's up to you, right? 5 to 8 questions is good because remember, we don't want to bog them down with busy work. I made that mistake as well. We want to encourage conversation. So if those questions encourage conversation and back and forth dialogue, that's what we want to see in those interactions with each other, right? And if those questions allow you to jump in and say, hey, you're on the right track, or hey, here's where we can veer off, that can be, as long as it does that job, then that's fine. How if I write an agent to process some of those questions, details, brain to
I'm
programs?
sorry, the
Uh,
interpreter cannot interpret.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just reading that out loud. I apologize. How about if I write an agent to process some of these processes, for example, grading discussion questions and details with AI or grading 240 programs with detailed feedback. Okay. I don't
I don't think that's a
100%
question. That's just
understand.
like a suggestion comment.
Oh, okay. Got it. I apologize. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and continue with the questions. I typically do a question every other to break it up. I think students see it as busy work just to get it done rather than actually engage with each other. And my questions have become very personalized since AI. So very good, Rachel. Thank you so much. And as long as you have a way for students to connect with each other, so for example, I use a combination of peer reviews and discussion. So it's still, the peer review still counts as that face-to-face interaction without bogging them down with busy work. I'm really glad that you took that into consideration with your design.
Sabrina, I'll read you the next question because I think it'll be easier. There's a lot of really great discussions and questions. So the next one
Okay,
is,
thank you.
in an online class, how do you control for students copying your prompt and putting it into a chat GPT for their post in your discussion? I know you kind of
That's a good
spoke about
question.
that a little bit,
Okay.
but if you want to add anything else, I know you mentioned videos.
hmm
Is there anything else you recommend?
That's a good question. So I think thinking about that backwards design in mind, and you can also use ChatGPT to help you brainstorm these ideas. What are some questions that are AI proof as much as possible? So reflection questions. So for example, they can reflect on their speech perform excuse me, in my example, they can reflect on their performance. So how did they do? Right? You can't put that in ChatGPT because ChatGPT doesn't know how you did, right? So more reflective questions, questions about the case study. In my example, they have to make reference to that case study all the time. You can talk about connecting their experience with the case study. Will it solve for all the problems? I'm unsure, but the more you have to talk about what are your thoughts, what are your feelings, if you put that to ChatGPT, it wouldn't make sense because ChatGPT can't tell them about their own feelings. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? All right, thank you so much.
The next question was considering RSI, Universal Design and Accessibility, when students are submitting video responses, whether it be
Mm,
for an assignment or discussion, are you requiring them to publish and edit closed captions?
that's a very good question. So that's for one. So what you can do, I believe if they record it via, I'm going to double check, but if they record it via Canvas, it could come up with some transcripts. You can also ask students to do the transcripts. That's a very good question. I don't 100% have an answer for that at the moment for accessibility, but I believe Canvas can convert, though. I do that for professors. They can convert and create captions. Not 100% sure how accurate the captions are. They can have some accuracy, but that is something I can look at further. Thank you so much. I'm going to jot that
Well, and let
down.
me just respond to that really quickly too. We're required by law to have all of our videos captioned, but students
Yes.
aren't held to the same responsibility.
Okay.
So if they're posting a video in a discussion, it doesn't legally need to be captioned, is my
Okay.
understanding of the regulations. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Because I understand about our record, our captions, but not necessarily students' captions. Um, but I can double check and ask that later. Thank you so much for the assistance, Chelsea. Are there any more questions?
There was a comment from Tina. I just wanted to like comment on as well. Thank you, Tina. It was AI-proof discussion posts feel impossible in asynchronous discussions. AI will answer personal questions the students paste into them. AI will just hallucinate some kind of personal response. So I think, Sabrina, you mentioned a lot of great things that there's no 100% bulletproof way of figuring out how to do this. There are little tricks that a person can insert into a discussion, but I feel like that takes away from our jobs as faculty members because we don't want to be like the police, like we don't want to be policing our students. So one thing, for example, I have my students watch a video and then I'll ask for a specific line in the video, and like the quote is, we have put a blank in space, but we can't figure out voting in America. And the students who didn't watch the video will put a man, but the word is Tesla. So
Oh, wow.
I don't like to do that too much because then I feel like we're kind of policing students and we're not having deep discussions with them. But I think, Tina, I think a lot of us resonate with your comment, but we're all just trying different tricks and techniques, and hopefully the more we do these meetings, the more we engage with each other, we'll continue to have like better, ways. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for your question. Thank you so much, Anwar. I just saw a comment from Audrey as far as captioning and the students, and she said, I've had a situation where a deaf and hard of hearing student in my class, when students created videos, I needed to teach students how to ensure their videos were closed captioned so their peer was not left out. I think it is a good skill to teach students how to make their content so they can share others with others and meet accessibility guidelines. Thank you so much for that comment. Thank you so much. And it's really important to teach people how to do captions and things like that. So thank you so much for that comment. I really appreciate it. Okay. Oh, and then we also talked about using additional resources. I think we have about 5 minutes before closing. I did have another, I did have um, but I think we did the closing. So thank you guys so much for your
I
time.
do.
I have about 5 minutes. Are we okay? Yes.
Yeah, I just had a few closing comments, Sabrina. So let me say those. And then if we have time for one more question, I do see some comments still coming into the chat, which is wonderful. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for a wonderful webinar. I went ahead and dropped the link for the survey in the chat. So if you could please take a few moments to fill that out. And you can also use that as proof of attendance. And then we also encourage you to explore our future webinars. We still have about, I believe, 5 more webinars this semester. Wonderful topics, such a variety of topics. I'm also dropping the link for that in the chat. And we will have the recordings of this webinar and associated slides posted on that same link. Just please give us a week for captioning. And with that, I'd like to thank our ASL interpreters again. Thank you so much for your support and help. And thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us.
So we do have, I see some questions in the Q&A. Do video responses need to have transcripts for ADA compliance? So I think we already talked about that. And it
Yeah.
seems like that's something we have to look into some
Yes.
more.
So sorry, I did get a quick response. And I believe this was mentioned in the chat that because it's not like instructional, like primary instructional material, it doesn't need captions, but like it is a best practice. So I don't think it should be like at the top of our things to worry about list, but
Mhm,
like I said, it is good practice.
mhm.
And then the
That
other
was a great
question,
question.
thank you so much, Chelsea, for getting that. The things are changing so quickly that sometimes
I
I
know.
literally can't keep up. And I'm sure everyone feels the same. Will the great ideas and strategies in the chat be compiled for us to review when the recording and slides are shared? We can save the chat and see if there's a way to put them also on, but you might want to just copy paste it just in case. But we will try. So
Mhm.
thank you for that, Cynthia. All right, with that, we have 2 minutes. We will give you guys your 2 minutes back and let you go enjoy the rest of your day. And yes, the slides will be available. I see that question. We will post them on the CVC website. And let me drop in the survey again in case anyone missed it. You're very welcome, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much for attending. It was so nice meeting all of you. Have
All
fun and
righty.
happy teaching. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye.